Let's get ready to rumble!
How much heart do you need to be a fighter? Now, you could argue that you can't just give one answer to fit all, because many of these kids, before they turn pro, they know their limitations. Some of them know they're going to turn pro, and they're going to try and let their ability take them as far as they can. If they end up at what you may term as journeyman level, so be it. Others, they have that belief in themselves, and we all see something in them. Yo, this is a potential champion, whether that's domestic or world level. So the thing is, the guy who's going to aim to be a champion, he's probably gone for a little checklist of the things he's got to be prepared to do to get there. And if that means walking through fire, he would have already checked that off in his checklist. But the journeyman, he fights with a journeyman's mentality. Maybe on occasion, when the mood takes him, he might really go for it. But more often than not, he will fight hard against a contender, but not hard enough that it's going to take so much out of it that he can't glove up next week or in a month or so he can fight again and try to do the same thing again, which is just go the distance and get his payday and not take too much punishment. Yeah? Now, some of these journeymen are gifted. So, and let's say this particular journeyman who's just went the distance with this contender, if he had really fought harder in his fight, he might have actually beat him. He might have actually won it, yeah? But he didn't. On this night, he decided to really stick with the script and be a journeyman. Should we question his heart? The fact that he could have won the fight if you pushed it a little harder. Do we question his heart? I don't know. Let's remember, he had a set agenda in his head, which was he needs to fight next week or in a month or so. He might fight out of his skin and beat the guy on points. The fight goes to the scorecards.
Judge Ed Mosley scored the bout 97-92. Judge Robert Paganelli scored the bout 99-90. And Judge Jack Richards scored the bout 98-94 for a split decision. The winner from Benton Harbor, Michigan.
Well, wait a minute here. First of all, wait a minute. First of all, this is terrible. This is disgraceful. First of all, they said a split decision. They said a split decision. I mean, and it's not a split decision. This is a travesty here. This is terrible. Look, this guy Augustus acted like a clown tonight, but he also acted like a fighter. He also fought like a fighter, and he won this damn fight. All right. This is a disgrace. Listen, Teddy, I just grabbed the score sheet from the ring announcer. This is a disgrace here. There should be an investigation. This is what's wrong with boxing. This is what chases our great fans away from this great sport.
What would it really have been worth? These are real scenarios. You see, it's like what I was saying in the Eddie Chambers video. Preparing to win big fights, it takes a lot out of the boxer's mind, soul, and body. Takes weeks of preparation and months of strategizing. He needs his backers to cover certain expenditures, promotion, give him an allowance so he can focus solely on the ring, his food, supplements, vitamins, quality of sparring partners. All of that costs money enough. And the journeyman is not afforded all this luxury before he enters the ring. But back to this contender, this rising contender. So if he goes in the ring as a contender and he's touted as a potential champion and he fights like a journeyman because he don't want to push himself, should we question his heart? I'm not sure if we should really question a boxer's heart, but we can see why in this scenario that you would, because He's put himself in a position where he's being talked about as a potential champion, as a top-ranked contender, and now he's not delivering. He's not a journeyman. So, yeah, we can see why, that he's courting such criticism now. He's not doing what's being expected of him. The truth is, there is no correct answer. It's all about what expectations we have from certain boxers, I guess. Imagine if Muhammad Ali did what he said he would have done in that interview against Norton. He said if he knew his jaw was broken, he would have quit. How would that affect how we view Ali today? His legacy. Larry Holmes, when he was an amateur, he had a reputation of being a quitter. I think he quit against, was it Dwayne Bobick? He sort of like just gave up. I think he just gave up. And they pretty much wrote him off from ever being a name in the sport. But he made it in the end. I think the only time Larry was stopped in the ring was against Tyson as a professional. And let's not even question his heart in that fight. He was sparked out cold on the floor, yeah? What about Sugar Ray Robinson versus Joey Maxim? I mean, Ray was attempting to win his third title, a light heavyweight, to add to his welterweight and middleweight success. But I think, was there 1 round to go? At the end of the 14th, the man was exhausted. His lungs had gave out because the arena was very hot. And with Ray's style of moving and boxing, it didn't really favor his style. Whereas Joey Maxim just kept his feet planted in the ground, hands up, followed Ray around. He managed to outlast Ray in the heat. Now, should they have sent Ray out for the 15th? Even though he was dehydrated and probably really needed to get to a hospital fast? I don't know. I don't know. Should we question Ray's heart? Because he wasn't knocked unconscious. He was still on his feet. And he didn't come out for that round. And I'm just going to play the advocate on this one. I'm not going to try and sway you this way or that way with a vid. Just want to point them out. What about Roberto Duran versus Ray Leonard in the no mask fight? I mean, Duran quit in that fight. And he didn't quit because he was getting hit with concussive punches. He quit because he was frustrated. Because he couldn't hit Leonard. Because Leonard was humiliating him. That's why he quit. So, does that come down to heart, or did Ray just get the psychological edge over him on the night? I don't know. I don't know. Does quitting because you're humiliated more than physically hurt count as a lack of heart? I'm not sure. I've heard the argument that he lacked heart in the first Leonard fight, but you could put up a case and say it was just as much a psychological defect as you could put up a case for saying that he lacked heart. I mean, when Duran was in the twilight years of his career, past his prime, he fought somebody named Pat Lawler. And he injured his arm. And he quit. And to me, it's not up to you to say, well, he was old, he shouldn't have been in the ring. No, he went in the ring. And it was Duran. It was Roberto Duran. Yeah? He chose to fight. You can't give exemptions to certain fighters because you have an affinity to them or because they're old or... No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Once 2 men go in the ring, that's it. Age, experience, injuries... They don't factor into it. It's an even fight. That's what it is. Both men have 2 arms, 2 feet. To get in the ring, you have to pass certain tests. So both men were passed fit to fight. And he quit. Are you going to hold that against the legacy of Duran? Like I said, I'm just playing the advocate. I'm not trying to swing you. Did Vitaly Klitschko's performance against Lennox Lewis And he didn't quit in that fight. That cut was gross. So let's face it, it's one of the worst cuts we've seen in a ring. Yeah? Did that make up for the time that he quit against Chris Bird? Did that make up for it? Or does the Chris Bird result still linger in your head that if it gets really sticky in there, he might do the same thing?
Shouldn't a prize fighter be able to fight when he's hurt?
Is there an argument that you can have too much heart? Is there? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there again. Because I'm going to stray off boxing for a minute. There's a MMA fighter by the name of Phil Baroni. Now, I was watching this guy in his fight against Frank Shamrock. And Shamrock got Baroni in the neck hold. So, instead of this guy just tap out, because you're not getting out of it and you're looking fucked. The man's face was turning red. You're thinking, why don't you just tap out? And he wouldn't tap out. He could have tapped out. He was still conscious where he could have tapped out. But you could see he was just fighting it. And tapping out was just the last thing he was going to do. He actually let himself go unconscious. I was watching the TV and saying, this guy's a fucking psycho. And it wasn't until I was watching a 78 Fight News video about fighters in combat sports who have been caught taking PEDs. And when he read out Phil Baroni, I was like, oh, okay. It's the juice, because that's not natural. That's not natural, you know?
There was no tougher man than Julio Cesar Chavez. He would take 2 punches to land one. It was, in fact, an urban legend that on a CAT scan they saw that his skull was actually thicker than the common man's because he could take more punishment.
Just a tough little SOB.
You see, your body has certain responses and impulses that it has to obey. That's why you can't physically knock yourself out with a punch. Not on purpose. You can't do it because the nerves in the fist that you're going to use in the motion of the punch are all interconnected with the nerves in your chin that's going to absorb it. So you can't manipulate or trick your body to do that. You just can't do it. Yeah? Certain people have a higher threshold for pain, but even they have a limit. You even get people with that, I don't know if it's a disease, but they've got some condition where they just don't feel pain. They break legs, all types of damage, pour boiling water on them, and they don't feel pain. There's no pain there. And I know some people are probably thinking, wow, that's not a bad condition to have. But you know, it's not as simple as that. That shit comes with a lot of emotional and psychological baggage because, yeah, nobody wants to feel pain, but pain is vital. It warns your body of certain things that's going down, cancer, diabetes, etc., etc. Going back to Phil Baroni, is that admirable that Phil would do that to try and get the victory? Was it smart? Is there a point that he should have tapped out? Or is that the ultimate pinnacle of a sportsman exerting his manhood? Would it have been such a slight on his manhood if he tapped out? Would it really? I don't know. It sounds like I'm trying to sway you, but I'm not. I just have to pose the question. What about Oscar Bonavena? Now, the story I'm going to tell here about him proving how much heart he has wasn't inside the ring. Now, this guy was one tough fucking heavyweight contender. He floored Frazier and nearly knocked him out. He went the distance with Frazier. He staggered Ali really badly, and Ali managed to get to him in the end and stop him. But this guy was tough, this Argentinian guy. Top heavyweight contender in the 70s. This is how Oscar Bonavena died. Apparently he was seeing some prostitute, I think it was. And I don't know if it was the pimp or somebody who thought he had control over the woman. He got in the mix. He must have interrupted the interaction between Bonavina and the woman. Now, the guy knew he couldn't beat Oscar in a fight. He knew that, yeah? He knew he couldn't do that. So he pulled out his gat. So instead of Oscar just leaving, Oscar would not back down. And the man had to shoot him and kill him. Now, if you watch Oscar fight in the ring, you can see why somebody like that would do that. There's people like that. They won't back down from anything. They will not back down. But does there come a time when your brain must overrule what your heart is saying? I mean, I've never heard of no fighting unit or tribe or army, military or whatever, who haven't had retreating as part of their fucking strategy to win. And it's not just cowardly running. This is actual military strategy. Yeah? Retreating, conceding ground, negotiating, diplomacy. All just as important as learning how to shoot your gun and kill a man with your bare hands. But you see, what that brings into play is fighting with your head as much as your heart and your physical body. Using that brain. People accuse Mike Tyson of not having no heart and quitting in the ring. Well, okay. Let's take the first loss to Buster Douglas. If you call getting knocked out and you're on all fours and you're so out of it that you're trying to put your gum shield in your mouth on the floor and the guy's been punishing you for the best part of 11 rounds or whatever round the fight stopped in. It didn't look like Mike quit to me. It looked like somebody punched the shit out of him. Then we can go to the second Razor Ruddock fight. Ruddock fucking really gave Mike the works that night. And Mike came through it and he won that fight. Where a lot of fighters would have quit because maybe you're too young to know. But Ruddock was a formidable punching force at the time when Tyson fought him. Nobody wanted to fight Ruddock. Yeah? Tyson even admitted the second fight with Ruddock just fucked him up. He said he was never really the same after that fight there, you know? So, what about the first Holyfield fight? When Tyson got stopped in 10. Did he quit? Didn't look like he quit to me. Looked like he was just getting hammered by 6 punch combinations at a time. And he just couldn't stop the water that was coming through the leak. I didn't see Mike quit. I didn't see him quit. You could say that when he couldn't get his own way in the ring, that he wasn't as effective. I'll run with that one. But just because he can't blow somebody out because their skills are superior in terms of jab, movement, etc., does that mean that he hasn't got no heart? No, it just means he can't deal with good boxers. Nigel Benn, the great British UK warrior, after his most notorious and famous victory against Gerald McClellan, it was clear to see that that fight took a lot out of the guy, physically and mentally. Just wasn't the same fighter again. He lost on points to the South African Malinga, somebody he would have probably knocked out in a few rounds at his peak, in all truth. Even though Malinga was a good fighter, that's my opinion. He lost 2 consecutive fights to Steve Collins. I think the first time he got some kind of leg injury, and he quit. And the second fight, him and his cornermen didn't even offer up any type of excuse. They just sat down in the corner and they just quit. How are we going to factor that in when we look over the Dark Destroyer's career today? He lost his last 2 fights by not answering the bell, even though his reputation was built on outgaming and outpunching his opponents in his best victories. By a lot of the standards, what I'm hearing out in the boxing community, is there a case to call him a quitter? I mean, what about Prince Nassim Hamed? Now, he never ever quit in a fight. He was never stopped. But after the Barrera loss, he fought one more time and he won that one on points. We never saw him in the ring again. I always found that really strange because, yeah, Barrera beat him. He didn't get concussed or knocked out. It wasn't the worst beating we've seen somebody take in the ring. And he never wanted to either avenge that defeat or come back and really cement his place amongst the greats. I've heard people say that because he didn't attempt to get his career back on track, that showed a lack of heart. Now, they're changing the dynamic totally. They're not just applying a lack of heart in the ring, they're applying it to him exercising his option not to fight no more. Which is crazy. In my opinion, if you think differently, let me know. I mean, fighters are always castigated for not knowing when to stop fighting. He did know. And he still can't win. They're saying he lacks heart because he made a decision to stop fighting. A career choice. Oscar De La Hoya is not a favorite amongst his fellow Mexicans. Not like they revere Juan Manuel Marquez, Canelo, Chavez Jr., and his dad. Is it because they don't think he fights like a Mexican? I don't know. A lot of people said Oscar should have pushed it a little harder in the final few rounds against Trinidad. I mean, Juan Manuel Marquez is not the archetype Mexican slugger. He's a counterpuncher, but he's still revered by the Mexican massive. But he does have that Mexican quality where he will sort of leave it all in the ring. Credit due to him. And that brings me neatly into this segue. This question of fighting heart. Like, and this is no disrespect to Mexican fighters because they really pioneered the art of infighting, fighting inside. They always say Mexican fighters have heart. They have heart. And because I respect what Mexicans do, I'm going to take them out of the equation. Let's just say people who fight in the pocket and slug. Yeah? The Marcianos, the Dempseys, the Ricky Hattons. These fighters are always said to have heart. They fight with heart. But you have to take the argument, well, I'm going to take the argument to a base level. Let's say two guys go into a gym. One of them is tall, athletic, and good at most sports. Yeah? The other is not a bad sportsman. He's shorter, he's a little stockier. He's not as fast. His hand-to-eye coordination doesn't match up to the taller guys. So they go into a boxing gym and they glove up. And they're going to have a little sparring match. And let's say they have a base knowledge of the mechanics of boxing. So the taller, faster, the more coordinated guy of the two decides, I'm going to stay behind my long left jab like Vladimir Klitschko. Yeah, he's basically impersonating a boxer. And he's a fairly good athlete. The shorter guy, he's not as fast. Yeah, he's not as coordinated. What's he going to do? Is he going to impersonate Vladimir Klitschko too? He doesn't really have that option. He doesn't. He just doesn't. This is how it goes. Just genetics, whatever. Yeah. He has to turn it into a street fight. He has to turn it into a street fight. He has to fight with his heart. The more athletically coordinated, taller guy has more of an option to fight with his head and not engage the guy in toe-to-toe trading. And you see, the reason I've took it to a base level, in the Cuban amateur boxing gyms, it's not an exact science. You always get exceptions to the rule. But it's like a factory. They look at the kids who are tall, with long arms and legs, and say, okay, he's already got a long reach. When we add a little bit of our magic dust, he could be a potential Olympic champion or world champion. That's how they actually do it. Yeah? And obviously, if there's a short kid who comes in and he's naturally gifted, fast or whatever, he'll get in there as well. Of course. But primarily, they look for the kids with the long limbs. That's why people used to scream at Paul Williams to box. Because they figure, why make it harder for yourself than you have to? Sonny Liston versus Cassius Clay. That fight resonates in my memory as far as boxing goes. In some strange ways. It was like Ali was in the Matrix. You know what I mean? Like some of the moves he was doing, it's like, wow. Just leaning back, making the punch miss by fractions, or sometime by the proverbial mile. And Liston looked like he was on some Fred Flintstone, Stone Age shit. That style of boxing just looked dated compared to what Ali was doing. And it's questionable if Liston even landed a full-blooded punch in the 6 rounds or so that the fight went. He was in the ring with a man, with a destiny. This guy's dancing on his feet. Fast, swift combinations. Hands down by his waist. We haven't seen this shit before. What was Liston supposed to do? Ali didn't just come from the gym, trained, yeah, I'm ready to fight. No. He had a higher calling. So I don't know what Liston was supposed to do. Apart from quit on his stool, because he couldn't hit him. He even put whatever on his gloves and tried to blind him. That didn't work. Sonny had a reputation for manhandling policemen. I'm sure he didn't take no shit from nobody in jail either. I don't think Sonny lacked heart. I really don't. Because I saw the Cleveland Williams fight. I think he fought him twice. I saw one of them anyway. And Cleveland Williams landed some good shots. And he could punch. And he was a tall, powerful, fearsome heavyweight who people were scared of. And Sonny took them shots without wobbling, without bitching, without complaining. I don't think he lacked heart. I really don't. I don't accept that. But that day when he fought Ali, he was up against forces beyond his control. That's all I can say. Alexis Arguello, second fight against Richard Pryor.
And it hit me like a shot, man. I started crying and shit. I was sitting there, I said...
Alexis Arguello against Aaron Pryor even. Classic mistake. After the final knockdown, Alexis could have got up, but he just sat there, looking at the referee, looking at the stars, saying, I can't stop the hurricane. Is there no acceptance that there are some fights that can't be won? He hit him with everything. He threw everything at Pryor. Pryor just kept coming back. And he sat down in amazement like, what's this guy made out of? And I'm sorry, I was playing advocate, but it's coming to the end of the video. I can't hold out. I would argue Alexis Arguello's corner to defend his honor that he had heart with any boxing fan at any time. I'm sorry. Have to throw my bias in there. Lloyd Honeyghan versus the undisputed welterweight champion, Don Curry, who at the time was touted by many as the pound for pound best fighter in the world at the time. Maybe Curry underestimated Honeyghan a little. Maybe he was weight weakened like everybody said. But all I know is Honeyghan couldn't miss him with the right all night. Couldn't miss him with the left for that matter too. Wobbled him a couple of times, which was an unfamiliar sight in a Donald Curry fight. Had Curry dancing on his back foot, which just wasn't Donald's style, to avoid the punishment coming at him after 6, 7, or was it 8 rounds. Curry didn't get off his stool. He didn't come off his stool. Lloyd was not going to be denied that night. Like some people say that Bernard Hopkins bailed out on the first fight with Dawson after the body slamming thing. I didn't see it like that. I thought Dawson deserved to get penalized for the infringement. That's what I thought. This isn't wrestling. But you know, it's hatred for certain fighters that brings out certain comments. You know, a lot of people can't wait to see guys like Hopkins get his wig split and get really damaged in the ring. Because there's no doubt Bernard is one of the most hated boxers I've witnessed in the 25 or 30 odd years I've been watching boxing. There's no doubt about that. People question his heart, even though he's had world titles from when they probably wasn't even born till just the other day. And look, whether you think he hasn't got a crowd-pleasing style or whatever, let's just put that to the side. Just for a second at least. Because for you to suggest that for the best part of 2 decades, that he's managed to unify titles and win tournaments, won belts at 3 different weights, and that he's managed to do this by cheating the public, using foul tactics, and deceiving all of us, referees, judges, fans, for the best part of 2 decades, and he's got away with that, you people might actually be the best examples of haters that I could ever come across. And look, let's get this straight. I'm no Victor Ortiz fan because this joker was talking about he was trying to break Floyd's nose with the illegal headbutts. So I was waiting for Victor to get his ass whooped. You know what I mean? And it just came sooner than what we thought. Yeah? But at the same time, I'm not going to call Victor a coward. A little irrational? Yeah, definitely. A little highly strung? Yeah, of course. But I'm not going to call him a coward or a quitter. And what I want to know is, now he's got the medical reports to back up that his jaw's really fucked up. Man's got metal plates, screws, his shit's all wired up. Does that change some of you guys' opinions that he's a quitter? Or are you just going to stay steadfast in your first assumption that he should have kept going? I'm just interested to know. Currently there's a debate, which I heard boxing socialists talk about, and Dan Goosen, he chimed in regards to the Victor Ortiz fight, and he said, how comes it's okay for UFC and MMA fighters to tap out? But when a boxer quits, everybody says, oh, you haven't got no heart, you're a coward, etc., etc. Now, as a boxing fan, there are a few points in this argument I will concede to MMA. But I won't concede the whole argument, because in mixed martial arts, you can use elbows, feet, arms, hammer strikes, knees, and unlike boxing, mixed martial arts does have submission moves, like the arm bar, choke hold, and the leg holds. Boxing doesn't have submission moves. The only way to legitimately win on boxing is through punching with your fists. But the reason I won't concede the argument is because I've heard so many mixed martial arts fans saying, well, the boxers don't endure as much pain as the mixed martial art fighters.
Fact of the matter is, mixed martial arts is a sport where experts compete. Not just boxing, not just...
Hold on. Didn't Tim Bradley just recently dispose of Manny Pacquiao with one of his ankles broken, and he had to fight 10.5 rounds with the injury? Eddie Chambers, he recently had to fight with one hand in a 12-rounder for roughly the same distance that Bradley did. I mean, how long are MMA bouts? 15 minutes? What about Danny Williams versus Mark Potter? When Danny Williams dislocated his shoulder, and you could visibly see the bone disfigured from the dislocation. You could visibly see it. His body was just contorted through the injury, and he still managed to knock out Mark Potter with a left uppercut. And he had to fight at least 3 rounds with that injury. But in my opinion, mixed martial arts is just as sanitized as boxing, and their combatants are just as protected as boxers. I've seen mixed martial art fighters quit after they suffered cuts. I've seen their cornermen pull them out when they've took too much of a beating for their liking. I've seen controversial stoppages by the referee where the beaten fighter has vehemently protested that it shouldn't have been stopped. Now, if MMA want to champion themselves as the Roman gladiators of all the combat sports, then they should take away the referee's power and the ringside doctor's power to stop fights. So that way, the fighters have the option to be real Colosseum gladiators, as some of their fans and shareholders are making them out to be, and fight to the death. If they do that, I'll concede the argument. But in my opinion, boxers have just as much heart as MMA fighters.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
So when we say a fighter doesn't have heart, are we suggesting that he should give every pound of his essence to the ring?
We're warriors, man. When we go into battle, we come out, or don't come out at all.
Yo, you better give me the...
Where are the lines of battle actually drawn in the debate? Is there any acceptable time to quit when you're in the ring? Because any accusation of the contestants not having no heart could suggest that we think they should fight to the death if necessary. Like I said at the start, there's no one single answer to fit all. You know, we're all individuals. Some of us take different things from the spectator element of watching boxing. Peace out.